president. And while the Trump team says they respect the transition's goal, they make no apologies for Trump's timing. Here's what White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer says.
If the president-elect wants to get things done, he's going to get things done.
All right, joining us now to discuss Danielle McLaughlin, Democratic strategist, and Ben Ferguson, CNN political commentator and host of The Ben Ferguson Show. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Good morning, Victor.
Merry Christmas Eve as well. Let me start with you, Ben. During the primary, you were not shy about criticizing then candidate Trump. You then supported him when he became the nominee. You support him now as president-elect. But I wonder your take on when the Israelis, and we learned this in the lead-up to the UN vote, called upon President-elect Trump to try to influence the Obama administration to veto this resolution. Should he have obliged?
Absolutely, because they're our biggest ally in the Middle East. And, you know, some people have said, well, Donald Trump being involved right now is, quote, unprecedented. It's also unprecedented to throw Israel under the bus in this way at the United Nations, a place where the entire, it seems the entire Middle East is anti-Israel, celebrating anything that they can do to slap down Israel, while not even really condemning with the same type of force any of the terrorist nations in the Middle East, including the actions of innocent people being killed in Syria. So I think it was appropriate for him in a moment here where it was very clear Barack Obama was not going to stand by Israel, that this was, I guess, part of what he wanted his legacy to be leaving the White House, that he is not a friend of Israel. And I think it was important for him to have a voice in this and to let Israel know, hey, when I get there, things will be different and you still are our ally, and I'm not going to let you be treated this way at the United Nations by other nations.
Danielle?
I think it's helpful to think about this by taking it out of the partisan realm. Going back to 2008, when President Obama was president-elect, it also felt like the world was burning down. We were losing 500,000 jobs a month in the last quarter of 2008. And actually, George Bush invited President-elect Obama to join with the G20. Obama exercised restraint in terms of not going to the G20 meeting, not talking about the fairly unpopular stimulus package that the Bush administration was putting together. We haven't seen this kind of discussion of a president-elect or an insertion of a president-elect into world affairs since 1968, when President-elect Nixon sent Henry Kissinger to the Soviet Union to discuss non-proliferation. So I think even taking partisanship out of this, we're a country of laws, but we're also a country of customs. And the American people elected Barack Obama, who will serve through January 19th, and I think it's important to respect that.
You know, Danielle, in preparation for this conversation, I went back and looked at then President-elect Barack Obama in late 2008, early 2009, to determine if there was any place here where he entered into the political conversation prematurely, potentially. I want to take you to George Mason University, January 8th, still weeks before his inauguration. And yes, he stayed in the background as it related to foreign policy matters, but here's what he said about the economy.
That's why I'm asking Congress to work with me and my team day and night, on weekends if necessary, to get the plan passed in the next few weeks.
So this is a president who's still weeks out from inauguration saying, I'm going to Congress, I want you to work with me. He's not talking about George W. Bush. Is he guilty of the breaking the one president at a time rule that now some around him are criticizing Donald Trump for breaking?
I think you're right, Victor. I think that he was talking about things that a president ultimately has power to talk about. I'm not sure that there was a lot of daylight, though, because, of course, the stimulus package was the genesis of which was in the Bush administration.
But he's saying work with me. He's not saying work with George W. Bush. He's saying work with me.
I agree. I do agree. But I think there's a difference between saying work with me and then tweeting out things about foreign policy as it relates to nuclear weapons or other things that are not only out of line with what Obama has said, but 30 or 40 years of American foreign policy.
How about that? How about that difference between domestic policy and foreign policy, though?
Yeah. This is total hypocrisy. It was very clear in the statement that you just played there that he was trying to undermine the deal that was being done at the last moment. It was very clear that surrogates around Barack Obama. At the same time, we're sending a very clear message in 2008. I was a part of those debates that he was going to do something completely different and did not support what George Bush was going to be doing there. So you have to look at this in the context. Israel is our biggest ally in the Middle East. This president has not been a friend of Israel, and his lasting legacy is on when he's walking out as, hey, I'm going to let them hang out to dry here. I'm not going to support them. I'm not going to protect them. I'm not going to defend our biggest ally. It would be unprecedented for Donald Trump to not comment about our biggest ally historically in the Middle East.
Get to the point of the difference between discussing domestic policy, which Barack Obama was then in 2009, and foreign policy when we see the tweets from Donald Trump about China and this drone and about this vote in the UN.
Look, I think you have to look at what the news is of the day. The domestic issues were the news of the day in 2008. Why? Because we had the massive issue with housing, the massive issue with our financial system. So it would make sense that that would be a domestic issue.
There was the conflict in Gaza, which you didn't talk about then.
Well, but I think it's very clear now the issues that he's going to be walking in dealing with on day one that are going to be the news items of the day are going to be these international issues. Whether it be trade, whether it be Israel, whether it be Russia, those are the issues right now that are in the news. So I don't think it's so much of, hey, I can or cannot talk about domestic or foreign policy issues. I think it's an issue of you are allowed to talk about the issues of the day, whether they're in this country or internationally, and Donald Trump's not going to stop. And more importantly, he's not going to allow Israel to be treated this way.
All right, Ben Ferguson, Danielle McLaughlin, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Victor.
All right.
Merry Christmas.
To you too, to both of you. A woman calls police for help, but she's the one who ends up in jail. What the officer said that has a lot of people across the country outraged, and how police are responding to the video that shows how this all went down.